What is up, car addicts? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be comparing two absolutely incredible V10 manual driver's cars, the Dodge Viper GTS, the Gen 2 and the Gen 5. So the Gen 1 Viper, which is pretty similar in design to the Gen 2 over here, released, the first model year was 1992, so quite a while ago, over 30 years. And that car, it featured no roof, no windows, no AC, no power door locks. The car was just, you know, a purpose-built, just fun car, kind of similar to the Shelby Cobra of its day from the 60s. And Carroll Shelby himself even had some part in the design of the original Dodge Viper as well. So the Gen 2 GTS released in 1996, and finally it had a roof, power door locks, AC, you know, just nice amenities and creature comforts, which the original didn't have. Which just made it a lot more usable on the road and a lot more comfortable. It just made it more, you know, refined is basically what the Gen 2 is, but it's still very, very similar to the Gen 1. So starting off here with the front end of the Gen 2, if we look down below of the bumper here, you can see that it actually does have splitters kind of built into the bodywork down here. And then moving into the grille, we have the iconic Dodge crosshair grille. Moving along to the Gen 5 over here, I do have, so this is my Viper here, the Gen 5, my personal car. We do have the corner splitters, which are part of the TA 1.0 Aero package. So I did add that to the car. I didn't have it originally, but it was optional on the GTS. And you can see it does have it there. We also have the crosshair grille here, kind of similar. However, this one is just black plastic, so it's not painted. The stripes don't go through it, nothing like that. And it does have some intake vents here as well. Whereas on the Gen 2 over there, you can see that it's painted. So it's the painted crosshair grille with the stripes kind of going through it. Moving up here to the Gen 1/Gen 2 logo, this one was nicknamed Sneaky Pete. It was the name of the logo there. Awesome, awesome Viper with the fangs. I absolutely love that. And on the Gen 5, we have the Viper logo right here, like the chrome. And this one's, the nickname was Striker. So very, very cool there. Continuing over to the fog lights here. So the Gen 2 does have functioning fog lights. And fun fact, the ACR version of this car, that one, the fog lights are actually capped off. So it doesn't have fog lights. It just has like a little cap there. But on the Gen 5 over here, you can see it has no fog lights, and instead it has vents. And these are actually functional. So it's not meant for cooling. It's actually to direct airflow around the tires. So that's what that function of the vent is there. Moving up to the headlights, we have these awesome looking headlights here. This is the same one as the Gen 1. And then you see this little orange bulb in here. It's not a bulb. Some people think that it's a bulb or a turn signal. No, that's actually to level the headlights. It's basically a built-in leveler so that you can adjust the headlights if you're installing them, removing them, whatever, to make them nice and straight, because obviously this car doesn't have any electronics like that to help you level the headlights in the car. And you can see here the Gen 5, more of a modern design. It's got the LEDs down here. It's got an orange turn signal LED up here, and then the HID headlights there. Coming on to the hood of the Gen 2, we have an intake vent. So this goes right into the intake box of the car. And on the Gen 5, it's actually exactly the same. So it goes right into the intake box directly. And there's no actual like vent here with the mesh. So it's directly just purely open. I mean, you can throw a bird in there. it's right open. And the Gen 2 is the same way. Dodge is very brutal. They don't care. So, you know, maximum airflow. And then here we have the heat extractor vents on top. And fun fact of a Gen 5, these are actually have, the pattern on it is similar to like snakeskin. And this car has that theme on pretty much all the exterior vents of the car, which I'll show here shortly. It's very cool the way they did that. But continuing over here to the Gen 2, the heat extractor vents are actually here on the sides, which look fantastic. This was introduced with the Gen 2. The Gen 1 did not have these vents here. So the Gen 2s do have a bit of cooling issues driving around. The Gen 2s kind of fixed all of that. So while the Gen 1 is, I mean, really cool and iconic, that car has, those cars just have a lot of issues drivability wise. The Gen 2, I mean, it's just much more refined. They basically fixed all the little issues and they refined the car a lot when they introduced the Gen 2. Moving over here to these vents on the hood, they look like speakers, vents. What are they? So this one right here is actually fake. It's a fake vent. So you might ask, well, why did they put a fake vent here? For looks? Well, on the other side, if we go over there, that vent is actually functional, but it's not for cooling. This is actually for the AC system. So you can kind of see the circular hole right here. That's where the AC brings in the air directly right there. And then they put the vent on the other side just to have it kind of like symmetrical. But unfortunately, the one on the driver's side is fake. So, but it does look good. You gotta admit, it actually looks pretty good. And then on my car here, it doesn't have any vents here. Instead, it has the vents right here. So they kind of integrated there into the right below the windshield. Continuing here to the wheels. So something I want to mention here, this car does have the Gen 5 wheels on it. The owner of this car, he put the newer Gen 5 wheels. These cars come with like a polished chrome kind of look, 5-spoke wheel traditionally. But he wanted the black Gen 5 wheels to kind of make it look a bit more modern. I don't blame him. They actually look really good. And he even updated the proper Sneaky Pete Viper logo there. Now, every single Viper has the exact same lug pattern. So it's a 6 lug. So you can put Gen 5 wheels on a Gen 1. You can put Gen 1 wheels on a Gen 5. I wouldn't do that, but you know, they're all mismatched. I mean, you can put them on whatever you want. And here on the Gen 5, I have the lighter weight SRT wheels from the TA. And these were also available on the track package for the GTS. And I have the black lugs, but they're both, you know, 6 lug. So traditionally, like Corvettes, Camaros, most sports cars are 5 lug, but for some reason, Dodge wanted to do a 6 lug on the Viper, which is interesting. Brake calipers on the Gen 5, we have 4-piston brakes there. And on the Gen 2, we have 4-piston as well, although they're a bit smaller. Continuing here to the sides, so here you can have the Viper GTS logo, which on this car is body color in red, so it kind of like blends in there. Whereas on the Gen 5, it's actually chrome. Now, later in 2015, they did update Gen 5 to have the Viper script up here, but when it initially announced in 2013, the first model year, so 13 and 14, it only said GTS, did not have the Viper up here. A lot of owners, they order the badge and put it, but I don't know, I kind of like it like that. I think it looks kind of, you know, a bit more clean. Continuing here to the side vent here of the Gen 5. So you can see what I was talking about earlier, the snakeskin pattern there on the vent is carried over to there as well. And of course, that's a heat extractor to get as much heat out of the engine bay as possible. And you can see we have this round shape right here, starting at the base of the mirror right there. And it goes all the way around and then circles back down here to the side rocker. If we look at the Gen 2, has the exact same thing. Starts here, goes around into the side rocker. So they carried the design over to the Gen 5, whereas on the Gen 3 and Gen 4, they did more of like a squared off design. My favorite 2 Vipers is what's sitting right here, the Gen 2 and the Gen 5 are just super iconic in terms of design. Here, this one doesn't have a vent. It's fully open, so there's no vent there at all. It's just wide open, no mesh there. Again, Dodge is very brutal. Onto the mirrors, you can see these are more squared off, whereas on the Gen 5, they're more round. Continuing here to the doors. So the Gen 1 didn't have an exterior door handle or door popper. So because basically it had no windows, no roof, so you would just reach in and open the door from the inside. That was the way you would open the door of a Gen 1. For the Gen 2, they had to install a door popper. They put it right here and it's electronic. So you just push this and boom, you hop right in. I mean, this was pretty cool. I mean, in 1996 to have an electronic door popper on a car, it was pretty cool. Pretty much no car had that back then. Even the Corvette, it didn't get that until 05 with the C6, where it had electronic door popper. So Gen 5, similar, but instead this one has a body color sort of like handle you push in. It's still electronic, but that's the way you open it there. Sorry if I'm a bit sweaty, guys, too. It's really, really hot here in Florida, so I do apologize. I'm trying my best. On to the side rockers. So the side rocker of this car, you can see it's not built into the hood area at all, or the fender. It's just one straight piece Whereas on the Gen 5, you can see it actually goes up into this area a bit. So it makes the hood a bit smaller compared to the hood of the Gen 2, which is a bit larger. Now, this one you might notice the exhaust exits right here. And you can see that this is flush here as well. Now, on the Gen 1 Viper, originally the exhaust did come out of the side, but for the Gen 2, what Dodge decided to do was they routed the exhaust to the back of the car, which I'll show here shortly. However, the exhaust still runs through the side rockers here. So you can see it has this bulge right here. That's actually where the exhaust is running through. So, I mean, you'd think that they would have done that to reduce the heat, because these side sills do heat up quite a bit. But Dodge being Dodge, you still get a ton of heat on the sides, almost burning yourself getting out when it gets really, really hot. So they move the exhaust to the back, but you still have the heat on the sides. That's Dodge for you. But the reason they did it supposedly was because of back pressure and stuff like that. So basically, it gave you a little bit more power, supposedly. And some people also said it's because of the heat. It heated up less because the exhaust ran to the back. There's a million different explanations, but yeah. Now, continuing here to the roof. So this car, it does have a sort of like dome effect. You can see in the middle it kind of dips, and that's so that you have headroom inside for when you wear a race helmet. You can see it has that dip there in the center. Now, the Gen 5 has the same thing, although it's a bit more pronounced on the Gen 5, that dip. So more headroom, and also more headroom for a helmet. If you're tall like me, I don't think I fit in this car with a helmet. So these cars are very small inside. Continuing here to the side, this one does have a vent here. This, I believe, goes to the rear differential, if I'm not mistaken. And that's actually fully functional, whereas the Gen 2 doesn't have that. It just has this flush right here. Continuing to the rear quarter panels. So you can see they're pretty similar. I mean, you have this shape here on the door. You have this down here. And this one kind of meets here. This one meets, I mean, they're very, very similar. Continuing to the rear glass. So you can see this one does have the rear glass, and it has a cutout here, which appears to be a cutout for a hatch, for a trunk. But surprisingly, this car, it's only the glass that opens. So I'll show that here. So boom, opens right up with the struts. So you can see it's just this part that opens. Now, let's go ahead and close that up. Actually, I'll leave it open. On the Gen 5, has an electronic popper right here. And then you just pull it up. And you can see it's the entire hatch goes with it. And you can see this is all carbon fiber under here as well. Very lightweight, but that's the difference there. And I mean, this is a bit better because you don't damage the bodywork of the car, getting stuff in and out of the car. There's no chance of that happening. I mean, this part here, but not really. This one here, you can see, I mean, you have your fully painted bodywork here, so you have to be very careful loading stuff in and out of the car. Now, I'm gonna close this up here so I can show something. A lot of Viper owners, they don't like to talk about this. It's like something that they just don't want to talk about. It's like, I don't want to talk about it, but I'm gonna talk about it because I don't care. This annoys me a lot. This is on every Gen 5, whether it's an ACR or whatever. I believe they had an issue in the design process. So if you look at the gap right here, the panel gap for the trunk, and if you compare it to the panel gap on the quarter panel, where it meets right here, you can see, I mean, there's a major difference there, and that carries all the way around. So it's not an issue of alignment. You can see it's perfectly aligned on both sides. That was just, I believe, a manufacturing issue. And if you look at the original car they unveiled, the Striker Candy Red car, that one didn't have that much of a panel gap here. But for some reason, I don't know if maybe their supplier that they use for the carbon trunk hatch, maybe they made it too small. I have no idea. But I just wanted to mention that. So the Gen 2, you don't have to worry about that because this doesn't even open. So it's one solid piece. Now, onto the third brake light. I love this. So here you have the logo back here, and Dodge integrated it into the third brake light. That is just so cool. So when you press the brakes, lights up red. I absolutely love that. And the Gen 5, they did the same thing. They have the Striker, although this one does have the silver trim, whereas the other one, it's a little more, well, the other one's kind of like a darker gray. This one's just a brighter silver. Now, onto the tail lights of this car here. You can see it has the brake light, you got turn signal and reverse. These are separated into two pieces. And then you have the functional vent right here to get some airflow from the back tires there. Kind of helps get that disrupted airflow out through the car. Gen 5 has the same thing here. Same similar kind of vent, although it's a bit, it doesn't go towards the side of the tail lights, kind of like under it, more separated. And on the Gen 5, you can see it has the brake light with the turn signal light, and something really cool, it has the snakeskin pattern in the tail light. I absolutely love that detail. Dodge is really, really good at that. Onto down here in the license plate area, we do have a divot here and a backup camera, which the first time Viper ever got a backup camera was introduced with the Gen 5. And it was mandated, so I think Dodge did it because they kind of had to, not because they wanted to. And then the stripes do carry over right up until here. You can see this is a black panel here, which comes on the GTS ACR. On the ACR, I believe it's carbon. On the Gen 2 over here, you can see it's all body color. And this is sort of like, I mean, this is much more pronounced, this license plate area. I mean, look at the gap you have right here. Not gap, but the indent you have right here. No reverse camera, obviously. And you do have a keyhole there to open the trunk. Now, there's no trunk release back here for some reason. So you have to do it from the inside of the car. But the stripes do come all the way up until here and all the way up until the exhaust right there. And it also has sort of like fake vents back here. So, I mean, you know, it's Dodge. It is, I guess they just did it for like looks, for symmetry and stuff. But like I was talking about earlier, the exhaust of this car do exit out the back. And fun fact, this is the only Viper where the exhaust exits out of the back of the car, the Gen 2. So Gen 1, Gen 3, 4, and 5, they all have the exhaust coming out the sides, which I personally prefer. Now, in the back here, we do have the Dodge lettering there. Dodge, right in your face. They want everybody to know this is a Dodge. And then Viper GTS on the other side. The Gen 5 doesn't have any badging out back. So it's just nice and clean back here. And this one does have a diffuser, you can see. And it does have the reverse lights here, instead of on the Gen 2, where the reverse lights are right under the brake lights over there separate. And it does have a functional diffuser, and these vents are real. Hold them there. All right, now we're gonna move into the engine bays of both these cars, and I actually wanna show the process on opening the hood on a Gen 2. Now, both Vipers, there's no interior hood release on any Viper ever made. Every single Viper, you actually open the hood latch is on the outside of the car. So, on the Gen 2, the hood latch is located in the grille. Try to get this on camera here. Is actually right here. You can see it right there. And from right here, you just pull this end down, boom. Then you're not done yet. There's another latch. You can see there's a divot right here in the hood. That's so that you can get your hand in here, pull it up a little bit, and then you push this to the right. It's a little tricky. Oh, to the left, sorry. To the left, and then you pull this up and a little bit back towards you. Then you have it in that position, and then you can walk around to this area, and it's preferable to lift it with two people. If not, if you're a bit taller, you can grab it here from the center with two hands and then lift it up. This hood is very, very heavy. It's a one-piece fiberglass hood, so nice and careful there. And that's the way you open the hood of a Gen 2 Viper. Let me show how easy it is on a Gen 5. Much, much easier, the process. So on the Gen 5, the hood release is not up front, it's actually back here. So the hood latch is right here. See it there? So you pull that, boom, and then literally you just, this is one piece carbon fiber. So it's super light, look at this. Goes up by itself pretty much. And you can see the inside of the hood there, all carbon right up here. This is absolutely beautiful. It's a very, very expensive hood, but it's lightweight and it's a lot easier to open compared to the Gen 2. Now that we're in the engine bay here, let's talk about the power plant of this car, which is what made the Viper so iconic and famous. Every single Viper has a V10 engine. Gen 1 and Gen 2 had an 8-liter V10, 450 horsepower in the GTS model with 490 pound-feet of torque. So a good amount of power. made it to a 6-speed manual, and that was the only way you can get a Viper. The owner of this car, he did put in the aftermarket cold air intake there system with the carbon box, which looks really good, with the smooth tubes as well. Looks fantastic. And then there, over there, you can see the AC system vent I was talking about there. So it has that little seal right there that seals right up to the hood. Now, onto the Gen 5. So in the Gen 5, they went to an 8.4 liter V10. The Gen 3 had an 8.3 liter V10, but this was an 8.4. This engine, the base version of this engine was introduced with the Gen 4, and again, an 8.4 liter V10. This one from the factory has 640 horsepower with 600 pound-feet of torque. Now mine, I do have a bit of bolt-ons and stuff done to it with the smooth tubes, intake box, I have headers, a few little things here and there, and this car is making closer to about 700 crank horsepower, naturally aspirated. So I mean, it's just super fun. And then of course the 6-speed manual, which is the only way you can get any Viper. These cars, they are very light. Most of the weight is from that massive engine. This was an aluminum block. So this engine, at the time in the 90s when they were designing the Viper, they started designing it in the late 80s, but at the time Dodge actually owned Lamborghini. So this engine was sort of like co-developed with Lambo, which is really, really cool. And Dodge kind of kept that engineering, and they kept refining it every single generation of a Dodge Viper. Got a plane flying overhead here, but now in terms of weight, this car utilized a lot of fiberglass and plastic. Obviously in the 90s, they weren't really using carbon fiber and stuff on cars like this. But, you know, back when the Gen 5 came out is when they started utilizing a ton of carbon fiber. The hood is carbon fiber, the roof is carbon fiber, the trunk lid is carbon fiber. This panel is carbon fiber. The doors are aluminum. The side rockers are aluminum. This, I believe, is plastic. The front bumper is plastic. So, you know, a lot of mix of components. And even though this car has a lot more modern amenities compared to the Gen 2, you know, a touchscreen radio and all that stuff, and just a much better AC system, the digital gauge cluster, you know, a few more airbags. You know, this car, it should weigh more, but because of all the lighter components on this car, these two cars actually weigh roughly the same. So it's roughly about 3,300 pounds to 3,400 pounds, just depending, but they both weigh roughly the same. Now, let's go ahead and move into the interiors. All right, in the interior of the Gen 2 Viper here, very, very old school. This interior is very similar to the Gen 1. They did make, you know, a few little adjustments here and there. The gauges, they moved them closer together. And this warning indicator section, it used to be here in the center on the Gen 1. They moved it down here. Obviously, a lot of plastic. The Gen 2 had like gray plastic, but the Gen 1, sorry, had a bunch of gray plastic that didn't really match. But for the Gen 2, they made it all black, so just a lot nicer in here. And like I talked about earlier, this car actually had power door locks, full AC system and all that. Let's go ahead and start it up. Make sure we're neutral there, clutch in. Oh yeah. Sounds fantastic. And the steering wheel here, you do have the airbag, a good old 6-speed manual, fantastic. And this particular car, very special, it's actually a final edition. So for the last year of the Viper, they made, I believe it was 360 final editions, GTSs. This one is number 120 out of the 360. Absolutely love that. So not just any Gen 2 we're reviewing here, a nice special one. We have the analog gauges up here, which I absolutely love that. Fuel gauge over here. I mean, that's just so well done. Here you have your passenger airbag on and off. So that, like, the Gen 1 had no airbags at all. No steering wheel airbag, no passenger airbag. So this car, I mean, it was just a lot more safe. Here you can see the seats. Fantastic, nice leather, little perforation there in the center. And this Gen 2, the seat belts actually come from the center. So traditionally, most cars, the seat belts, you actually grab them from the sides, but they couldn't do that here because there was just no space to do that. The Gen 1 actually had them mounted to this door plate right here. So when you would open the door, the seatbelt would come out with it, just not safe at all. So for the Gen 2, they moved it here to the center. So you kind of have to get used to it. You know, when you're getting in and out of this car, usually you'd reach over here to grab your seatbelt, but you have to get used to grabbing it from over here. It's kind of funny. You have your e-brake there, wide center console. Obviously, you have your transmission there. Nice 6-speed Tremec. Window switches are not here. They're actually in the center. That's another thing you got to get used to. Usually, you know, you go to lower your window, raise up your window. You know, you'd go reach for it here, but in this one, it's actually here. So, yeah, awesome there. Window switches and stuff. A lot of the gear is carried over from a lot of Dodge vehicles from the time. So the window switches, the AC controls, and all that stuff. But I mean, this is a purpose-built, you know, fun car. This one does feel a bit tighter in here compared to Gen 5. And also, I'm going to open the door here. The dash kind of curves out towards you, so you got to be careful you don't hit your knee here when you get out of the car. But not a bad place to be. I like it. All right, now let's move into the Gen 5 interior. All right, in the interior here of the Gen 5, so you can see this is drastically different. Obviously, the Gen 2 started off as a base Gen 1 interior with a few little updates. So, but I mean, the base design again in the early 90s. This released in 2013, this interior. So, I mean, there's basically like 20 years separating in terms of the interior design. This one has a lot of leather everywhere on the dash. You can see nice stitching, stitching up top as well. Just a really nice place to be, the door panels. And then, of course, you have the push button start. So, go ahead and fire it up here. Mine does have headers, so it's a bit louder, but start up there. And then, of course, you have the digital gauge cluster there in the center, which looks fantastic. Absolutely love that. And then here you have steering wheel controls, which you don't have on the Gen 2. This car, I mean, just a lot more refined. Some people say that it's too refined. Now, in here, you didn't have any analog gauges, unfortunately. However, you do have digital gauges in the screen. So at least they did that. You go to SRT performance pages here. Unfortunately, typical issue with the Hellcats and pretty much all the performance pages of like any Mopar, it does take like a million years for it to load. So I'll cut that. Oh, there we go. Finally loaded. Hit OK. A little laggy. I mean, again, this is from like 2013. So then you have a bunch of gauges and timers and stuff. I mean, pretty cool the way they did this, G-force. But here you have your gauges. So that will be the digital version of what you have in the Gen 2, like analog-wise. Live there, which looks fantastic. You also got a live engine horsepower there, so you see the power going up there. And then you have the backup cam with a screen and all that. You got the Striker logo here, flat bottom steering wheel versus the round in the other one. You have your window switches in the normal place instead of in the middle. You have your seat belts also in the normal spot instead of in the middle. So, you know, they kind of moved everything where it's sort of like supposed to be, but some argue that's also like made the Viper a bit more special, the Gen 2, all those unique touches. This one does have a glove box, but the Gen 2 doesn't have a glove box. Also has a little storage cubby right here, which the Gen 2 does have a cubby like that. You got a USB port here, just a bit more amenities. You have the cup holders here in the center, e-brake, 6-speed manual. Not bad. And this one does have a bit more space inside compared to the Gen 2. And you can see if I open the door, it doesn't have that dash curving towards you where you hit your knee. So you can see I have tons of room here to get in and out without hitting my knee. Got the sill plates, Viper sill plates, just looks fantastic. And the exhaust right there. This one does have the optional 18 speaker sound system, the Harman Kardon. So 18 speakers in this little cabin. I mean, it's a really, really good sound system. Let's go ahead and shut it off here. Now we're gonna do the exterior exhaust comparison. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so now we're gonna do the exhaust sound revving comparison. So we'll start off with the Gen 2. Now to mention, this car does have stock headers. However, it does have a Borla exhaust, so it sounds a lot better than a stock Gen 2. These Vipers with stock exhaust, they sound pretty terrible. A lot of people compare them to like a garbage truck mixed with like a diesel truck or something mixed with like a sports car. It's a really weird sound. However, once you have a nice exhaust on them, they do sound really, really good. Let's go ahead and start off with the Gen 2. I'm gonna move the mic to the GoPro mic so it doesn't cut out and you guys could actually hear it. So let's go ahead and do that. bad at all. Very, very nice sound. All right, now let's do the Gen 5. Now, my car here, I do have Bellinger headers and full exhaust, so it is a bit louder, or quite a bit louder compared to that one. And of course, the exhaust on this car comes out of the sides, so we'll show, I guess, the clip, I guess we'll do it from this side here, so you can actually hear the exhaust pipe there. So like I said, this one is quite a bit louder. Obviously, it doesn't have a rev limiter because it's tuned as well. So I can just rev it to red line sitting at a stop. So, all right. Now what we're gonna do is the driving portion of the video. Obviously, this is my personal car, so I've driven it quite a bit. So we're gonna start off with the Gen 2, and then we'll do a quick little drive and the Gen 5 to compare. Obviously, quite a lot of years separate these two cars and technology and all that. So it's going to be a very interesting drive in that Gen 2 over there. Let's go ahead and do it. All right, driving the Gen 2 Viper here. Man, this car is so weird. The pedals are like shifted. Let me shift so you can actually hear me. The pedals are like shifted to the left. So when you press the brake, it's not like directly in the middle in front of you. It's like off to the left. Everything is shifted over to the left, and they're so close together. Man, you gotta be so careful. You gotta drive some really narrow shoes for this. The Gen 5, that one, the pedals are close together and they're a little bit off to the left, but this one is a lot more over to the left. Something you definitely have to get used to, because I mean, the brake, the gas is still far off to the right, but the brake is like way off to the left. And then the clutch and the brake are like this close to each other. All right, we're gonna hop on the Mexican highway here. Let's do a little second gear. This thing gets up there quick. This thing gets up there quick. So much torque. Woo. Sounds fantastic too with this exhaust. He did a really good job. The Borla was a great choice, man. It sounds fantastic. I would definitely do headers though. These cars, they got a completely different exhaust note. When you do headers, it just sounds like more like raspy and a little like higher pitched. When you do the headers, they sound a lot better. Now, something I want to talk about, these cars get a really bad rep, Gen 1 through Gen 4, for people crashing them and stuff, because you know they're not forgiving. They have no traction control, no stability control. You know, it's just you and the car. And I think the main issue that people wreck these is because of the crappy tires. A lot of times, most of the owners that have these cars, they have them on original tires or all-season tires or all-season Pirellis. That is not a good tire. You need something that's really, really, really grippy. And this car has the Toyos on it, so it grips, I mean, super, super, super well. Let's do a second gear pull here. Oh man, the ultimate driver's car, man. And looking over that long hood, damn. You know, it doesn't feel that bad. The suspension, I mean, for the most part, it feels pretty smooth. Everything feels very solid. Nothing's like rattling, or it feels good. I like it. Very nice. The thing though, man, when you're steering, your knee, right? If you're a tall person, man, this car is my hand hits on the left side of the steering wheel. If my knee, when I'm going in and out with a clutch, my hand when I'm steering hits it's a lot tighter in here compared to the Gen 5. I'm 6'1" for reference, so I mean it's not bad. I mean, I have the seat all the way back. I think I'm like maxed out in here. I have a little bit of room for a helmet, but man, leg room wise, I'm like a bit definitely maxed out here. Got a little C8 up there. Those cars are everywhere now. I would rather own this Gen 2 than a C8, to be honest. Like, much more special. I know you really can't compare them, but the rawness of this car and the 6-speed manual is just so nice. Do one more second gear. Temp's looking good. Man, what a machine. Man, you know what, I guess being the Gen 2, that everything was much more refined compared to the Gen 1. I mean, it feels great, man. I mean, the car feels solid. It shifts perfectly. The temps look fantastic. Very, very good car. All right, now let's move on to the Gen 5. All right, driving the Gen 5 here, my personal car. Much, much more refined. The brake pedal is right in the middle instead of off to the left. Much more space in here. Got the short throw shifter from the factory, whereas the Gen 2 is got like longer throws. Also, the shifter sits a bit higher on the Gen 2. This one just sits a bit lower, which I kind of like a little bit more. Oh yeah. This is just a lot. The AC on the other one actually wasn't that bad. I was quite surprised. The AC system in that car works pretty well. Not bad at all. All right, little second gear pull here. This thing is a lot faster. I mean, it's basically like 200 extra horsepower, so I mean, it has to feel faster, and it does everywhere in the rev range. The other one is still quick. I mean, for the 90s, that Gen 2 was mind-boggling, the power that it had. This thing is just taking up a whole nother notch. I mean, it's, man, I always forget how fast this car is until I take it out and drive it again. I haven't driven it now and then a bit, and it's, man, it is a crazy, crazy machine. This is torque, pure torque. That's why I bought this car, man. One of my buddies, he has a yellow one. His name is Lewis, and I've been eyeing one of these. A little backstory: when I was a kid, my father had a Gen 2 Viper, kind of like the one that we reviewed here, in red as well, but his didn't have any stripes. It was red, no stripes, with like the light brown interior. Really nice car, and that's kind of the car that got me into cars. That right there. You know, my father has always been a car guy, and that's kind of, you know, that's kind of been like the same thing that I've been after my whole life. You know, ever since little Hot Wheels and the remote control cars, and even cars and video games, Midnight Club, Forza, Need for Speed, all that, I've just always been a car guy. And I told myself, you know, one day I will own a Viper. And I kind of wanted a Gen 2, but when I saw the Gen 5, I was like, wow, they basically made a modern Gen 2, you know, and it has all the creature comforts and the stuff I like, you know, more modern amenities, a touchscreen radio, a backup camera, better AC, a little bit more modern in terms of like all the electronics and stuff. And I was just like super, super impressed. But the prices on them, I mean, they went crazy, and now they kind of come back down a little bit. A Gen 2 is like like the one we reviewed, those are roughly like a 65, 75,000, just depends on the miles and the condition. A Gen 5 like this, a GTS, depending on the miles, they're like 120 to like 140,000. It just depends on the miles and such. But definitely a big price difference there. But this engine and this car, I mean, I just love this thing. All right, here we go. One more pull. I can't say what speed that was because I hope my GoPros are still there. Oh, it's so stupid. It's so fast. The gearing in these cars is so perfect. The gearing, those long gears, it's so much fun. And for those of you who follow me on the channel, you know that I own a C7 ZR1. And I love that car, don't get me wrong. It's modified, has headers, exhaust, a bunch of stuff done to it. But in terms of, if I want to get in a car just to have fun, even if I'm a bit slower, this is the car. This is the most, like, from the cars that I own, this is the most fun to drive. I just absolutely love it. Fun factor is like, you know, Doug DeMuro fun factor, this thing to me is like a 10 fun factor wise. It's just so much fun. I do have a little bit of a burble tune on this one, so I do get a little bit of pops on D-cell, which my tuner, he programmed into it. Let me see if I can, it does it at like 3,000 RPM. You're gonna hear him a little bit there. Yeah, love that. This car, I mean, I have it dialed so perfectly. I mean, the mods I have are just headers, exhaust, underdrive pulley, some heat shields to help with the intake air temps. What else did I do to it? Spark plugs, wires, the cold air intake filter in the box. I kept the stock box, which is actually better than doing the open air box. I just changed the actual filter inside. That's basically it for the most part. I mean, it's just little bolt-ons and a good tune, and I mean, you can get it to almost 700 crank horsepower. Right now, as this car sits in nice cool weather, it's making about almost 600 wheel, naturally aspirated on pump 93, which to me is perfect. But yeah, I bought this car for a reason, and I absolutely love it. All right, guys, so that concludes our day with two absolute monsters, V10 manual cars, the ultimate driver's car for sure. And to me, the best thing Dodge has ever created. Some people say that these are more like sports cars, but I mean, to me, it's a borderline supercar, like of their time, power-wise, rarity-wise. They're both hand-built. To me, I mean, I just think that they're just incredible, unique cars. Something you never see. How often do you see a Viper in the street? Rarely ever. So just fantastic. This car, much more raw. Like I said, no traction control, no stability control. This thing is really more of a driver's car than this one. And a lot less refined. The suspension's a bit more rough and all that. But still, I mean, a very fun, brutal car. This one, obviously, a lot more power, like I said. But it's much more refined. But if you can still turn off all the electronic aids and still make it a very raw car, just like this one. But anyways, guys, definitely let me know down below what you think down below in the comments. Do you prefer the Gen 2 GTS or the Gen 5 GTS? For me, literally, I like the Gen 5 a little bit more to own. But if I had like a massive collection of cars, I mean, I would definitely own one of these in my garage. It is the ultimate. You know, when you think of a Viper, this is pretty much what you would think of a Gen 1 or a Gen 2. And for those of you that live in the South Florida area, if you want me to film a video with your cool car, definitely shoot me an email down below. I have my business email in the description. And let me know what you got, and we'll possibly plan something so we can get even more comparison videos out there. The next one I want to do is like a Raptor R and TRX comparison video. That's one of the next ones I want to get done. So if any of you guys out there that live in the South Florida area own a 2024 Raptor R, definitely hit me up. But anyways, again, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.